you for tuning in to this week's edition of Stop, Look, and Listen. I'm your host, LaTroy Gardner. This week, we have a legend, a singer, songwriter, producer, drummer, former member of the funk band group Slave. Then he went on and started his own group, the Steve Arrington's Hall of Fame. And then he went solo. He's like 40 plus years in the industry, making nothing but hits. We got Steve Arrington. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Troy, glad to be here, my brother.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to have this time with you, sir. So, let's just start it off. Just talk about your childhood growing up in Dayton, Ohio. When did you fall in love with music?
Well, as a child, I used to, we had a stereo system back when you dropped your 45s from the spindle and the whole deal.
Uh-huh.
I used to stare at the records going around as a little guy, and I would remember certain songs by the labels. So my mother would, she would trip her friends out by saying, Steve, go play Motown so-and-so, or go play Atlantic. And I would remember this before I really could read. I'd remember the labels and I would remember how long the name of the song was. And a lot of times I got it right? So
right.
I was always fascinated with music. My first interest in music was I wanted to play drums. So I played pots and pans, books of various sizes to get tones. And I'm like, 3, 4, 5 years old when all that's going down.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as I can remember, I've loved music. And then my parents all and older brothers told me I was always fascinated by it just from day one.
Beautiful. So did you play in church, or did you join like the school band, or did you focus on the local scene?
Well, a little of all of that. I used to go to church all the time, and my great uncle was the preacher, Bethsaida Baptist Church in Dayton, Ohio. And we used to go to church, and he called me Music. That was my nickname. He didn't say Music. He didn't call me Steve. He called me Music. I did not know why. I was a little guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even he saw something in me when I was just a little head, right? So I used to sing in the children's choirs from time to time, the youth choir. But then my older brother, Victor, he used to have local bands, and I'd watch them rehearse. And my brother's 7 years older than me. So when I was just a little guy, I used to watch all these great musicians out of Dayton. They practiced in my basement. I sat on the steps, right, and watched them. As time went on, getting into 12, 13, I was able to play with cats my own age and do the talent shows, Battle of the Bands and things like that. And, just always music was always around. My mother played wonderful music, and my brother's like 7, 8 years older. Gary was 8 years, Victor 7. And so they introduced me to so much music. My mother was into, let's say, Jimmy Smith, Walk on the Wild Side. She was into early Etta James. And then my brothers were into Motown, and the one brother would be into like the Beatles and the Doors. So I had this cross section of styles of music between the church, mm-hmm. being at home, and then my brother's band, the Soul Agents. That was just music always around.
Okay, cool. So just speak on the music scene in Dayton, Ohio. So from what I understand, because I've been to Cleveland a few times, and Dayton is somewhat of a small city, but there was so much talent that circulated throughout, the city. So just talk about some of the groups that spawned from that scene, and how everyone sort of gravitated towards funk.
Well, I'll start by saying James Brown came to the Midwest and settled in Cincinnati, mm-hmm. at King Records. And at that time, he got some Midwest cats from Cincinnati. He got Bootsy Catfish.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big deal because James Brown, for us, was the biggest artist in the world. He settled in the Midwest right down the street from Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Ohio Players was the first group that really kicked off from Dayton. And they had been playing back up to different artists prior to them doing their own thing. So the Ohio Players jump off in the late 60s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their first joint was Pain. And we heard this song and it was unbelievable. It was funky, it was unique, it was original, and they blew up. And so all of us who came behind them, and they were 10 years older than me, but then there were some guys like perhaps we'll talk about Lakeside, or we'll talk about the Wilder Brothers. And they were sort of in between the Ohio Players and people like Slave. Slave was sort of like the youngest side of the Dayton movement.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, though, thing about the Ohio Players, they were so original. Their run was so long and they could do it all. Great ballads, great funky stuff, jazzy, bluesy stuff. They did it all. And instead of us all trying to sound like the Ohio Players, we wanted to be unique in our own way, the way the Ohio Players were, but in our own way. So we were influenced by them we gotta be original.
Right.
So some of the units that came out of Dayton, a lot of people don't know. We'll start, like I said, with the Ohio Players. We'll talk about Lakeside. We'll talk about the group Sun. Vesta Williams as a solo artist. We'll talk about Slave, Phaso, Heat Wave, a combination of Dayton and Europe. Rod Temperton and a couple of those guys came over from the UK. That being said, man, in the late 60s, early 70s on up through the mid 80s, Dayton was booming. You had the group Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the Trotman zapping those guys. So, I mean, it was killing. It was all at the same time. So we were all on the charts and kicking it at the same time. But we knew each other coming up doing Battle of the Bands and talent shows.
Right. Yeah, so I was going to ask you if the scene was very competitive, or did you all sort of cheer each other on and collaborate eventually?
Well, it was interesting. Roger Troutman did a lot of stuff on the first Sun album. Did a lot of work with those guys. It was competitive in a sense that we were doing Battle of the Bands and in talent shows, but it was also, we were very supportive because it was a small town and we knew each other those guys remember when I was playing pots and pans and, cats would come over from school we'd be hanging out playing football. Hey man, let's go get some popsicles or something, bro. And I had my pots and pans, you know what I'm saying? And books, on my couch and stuff. And I'd just be playing around. So we knew each other as we were developing before we started getting even into these groups.
Right.
So we were a family perspective for sure, man. But, when it came to these talent shows, you had people from around the corners. I mean, from the school, they would be like, the lines would be around the corner. I mean, talent shows, it's a small town. So there's talent shows and Battle of the Bands were a big deal. Mm-hmm. So yeah, man, it was competitive, but it was a good competitive. We continued to spur each other forward. But man, with the camaraderie was strong, man. I mean, we was like, can you believe we would be on the road together? And can you believe as we would look back, can you believe we're doing this? We're national and international. Can you believe it? It was a wonderful thing.
All right. So what was some of the local spots that most of the bands would perform at?
Well, Lakeview Palladium was the big spot. Because a lot of great talent they'd bring in, Spider Turner, Irma Franklin, Five Stair Steps, Joe Tex. They brought in a lot of music, and then the local groups would open up for them. So that gave everybody a good sense of seeing professional people at a close proximity, because we would open up at these shows at the Palladium, the local groups. Another place was Hare Arena, was a very important venue. That was even a bigger stage in which we all would, like, one day we're going to play Hare Arena, and because we would go see shows there. The Astro House. So there, you know, it being a small town, there was like showmobiles. Man, we played wherever we could get it together. We played in the park. We played everywhere, man. We just wanted to play. Every group, it seemed like there was a garage or a basement that there was a band in somewhere. So yeah, man. But I would say the major spot was Lakeview Palladium.
Okay. So at what point did you decide to relocate from Ohio to San Francisco and learn Latin percussion and drumming under Coke Escovedo in the Escovedo family? Most people would know Sheila E. Is also a member of the Escovedo family. So at what point were you still like in high school, or you were a young adult? At what point did you leave?
Right after high school, right after graduating from high school, 75. The interesting thing about going out to the West Coast, Lakeside, the guys that came behind Ohio players, and then there was the guys that came kind of behind Lakeside, who we were a little younger. We looked up to the Ohio players, but the Lakeside was more in our age group. They were a little older than the guys from Slave and some of the younger bands, Phaso. Mm-hmm. They went out to California to make it. They went to LA. Now, the interesting thing about the Ohio players, they went to Chicago to record. They did their recordings up in Chicago, especially the era when Sugarfoot became the lead vocalist. So these people would leave the city to try and make it, or leave the city to do their recording. So when it came to me, I'm like, yo, Lakeside has gone out to LA. I'm down with this hippie thing. I'm feeling, you know, cats like obviously Sly, but I'm also feeling Jefferson Airplane, and I'm feeling Tower of Power, but I'm also feeling Cold Blood and Grateful Dead and people like that. So I decided I wanted to go, and Santana for sure. I decided instead of going to LA, I wanted to go to the Bay Area to get that energy that was more, for me, that was more wide open musically. And that was right after high school. So I went out there like 77, 76. And shoot, man, and got connected out there. Took a long ride. Hadn't been there maybe 6 months. Took a ride where my buddy played keys that I had met out there. Mm-hmm. Yo, man, let's go for a ride, Steve. I'm like, yeah, let's get it, bro. And we went out to this area, kind of like a suburb area. And this dude says, that's Coke Escovedo water in his lawn, bro. I'm like, nah, that's not Coke Escovedo, bro. That's Coke Escovedo water in his lawn right there, bro. I said, well, I got to get out, man. We got to pull over and I got to get out. But I got to get out the right way, because I was so excited, because I loved Santana, and Coke was involved with that Abraxas album, that second album on Santana, where Pete Escovedo and Coke Escovedo were a part of that record. So I said, Mr. Escovedo, I know you, I'm not trying to bother you right now, but I'm out here from Ohio and I'm a drummer and I'm trying to really make it out here. If you know anybody looking for a drummer, here's my card, blase, blase, scoop. And just by the way, man, I love what you do. that Abraxas album, and I start and I had to back up and say, okay. Hey, I just want to say, man, it's an honor to meet you. And he says, I tell you what, I do know this guy who plays flute. And he plays like a smooth jazz kind of flute style. He's looking for a drummer. And he told me the address. So I came back and the address happened to be his house. So the dude was rehearsing, and he also was doing auditioning, for the drum chair in Coke Escovedo's studio area at his home, right? I'm like, yo, man, this is awesome. And Coke Escovedo was on the steps watching this audition. So he dug what I was doing. I got the gig with the flute guy and found out he opened for Coke Escovedo. So Coke said, I'm feeling what you're doing so much, man. I want you to be my drummer too. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. So the next thing I know, I'm playing with the guy that plays flute, doing a smooth jazz thing. Then I jump on the set on when Coke is playing, headlining the shows. So I had 2 gigs, and man, we played all over, and I was introduced to a lot more Latin type music versus just Santana, which in the Midwest, we weren't really into the salsa at that time. So I learned salsa music from the Escovedo family. And you spoke about Sheila, and I'll tell you very quickly, I met Sheila when he says, I want you to meet my niece. He didn't tell me she played percussion. She comes in, she brings in, we're in the Waldorf in San Francisco. She sits down. I'm like, oh, okay, what's she getting ready to do? And so we strike up. She starts hitting congas, man. And I'm sitting here playing going, yo, this girl is crazy hot with it, man.
Yes.
She was smoking. She was 19. And the rest is history. You already know. Mm-hmm. She turned into mighty, Sheila E. and greatest female percussionist all time. One of the greatest percussionists, period, of all time.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, just from the standpoint of being a percussionist, what was the adjustment from how you played before to learning the Latin percussion? Was it a learning curve, or you pretty much picked it up?
Well, the cool thing about Coach Escovedo, he mentored me. Mm-hmm. So I moved in with him and his management. And, basically he took me under his wing. And so he told me things to listen to. You got to learn clave, guaguancó, merengue, these different beats. And I did, and I worked on them real hard, and told me to listen to certain people. Because again, coming from the Midwest, my influence of Latin music was Santana, and Santana's music was more rock influence with his Latin styles, especially his first earlier albums. So when it came to people like Willie Bobo and the Palmieri brothers and people like that, Mongo Santa Maria, they was playing hardcore salsa, 17-piece band, 13-piece band, salsa's horn section and full percussion section. I had to take that in, and I was able to do that at a pace that I could pull it all in with Coke Escovedo. And then I eventually started playing with Pete and Sheila Escovedo, and they were playing straight ahead salsa, whereas Coke Escovedo was more a soulful Latin style.
Okay. So after your time in San Francisco with the Escovedo family, you ended up returning back to Dayton and joining Slave. Just talk about how that transpired.
Well, prior to going out to the Bay Area, I was in a local group called the Young Mystics. Mm-hmm. And they were freshmen and I was a senior. This is the great Mark Adams, bass player, who eventually went with Slave, and Floyd Miller, who also was in Slave, and Thomas Lockett, who was also in Slave playing horn. Floyd played trombone. The great Mark Adams played bass. So we would had this local band together with some other people, but we were all in sixth period together, music class, with Danny Webster, who was the guitarist from Slave, and also Mark Hicks, the guitarist from Slave. So we all would be in sixth period jamming together. We would bring our equipment. They would let you bring your drums, and I'd bring my drums, and we would jam together. That being said, we had a local band, and I had graduated. They were still in school. We had this janky like manager dude. So I decided, well, I'm going to go out to the West Coast, see if I can make it. They were still in high school. So time goes on. I hear Slide, right? Now, they still would be in high school, but they quit school. Mm-hmm. They were 16. Slide came out, right? I don't know that that's who it is, these guys that we have played together with. So I hear the song on the radio, and I'm like, man, I got to go snatch this joint up, man. I like this song. And I flipped the cover over, and half of the group is cats that I had played with in the Young Mystics.
Right.
Fast forward a little bit. This is still 77, getting into late 77, early 88, 78, I'm sorry. I get a call from them. They say, we're going to do going to change drummers. Man, we'd love for you to join the band. And I was just finishing my tenure with the Escovedos, because I started playing with Pete and Sheeta Escovedo as well, doing the straight ahead salsa thing. That was coming to an end. So I moved back to Dayton, joined up with the group, went to Jersey, because Slave was a combination of Dayton and New Jersey. Stevie Washington, Kurt Jones, Starlina Young, they were all from New Jersey, East Orange. So that's what it was a combination of mostly cats from Dayton and East Orange. Stevie Washington was the leader of the group, the first leader. Anyway, so then I joined the band and went immediately out on the road. And then my first recording with the band was on an album called The Concept. And that was later in 78.
Mm-hmm. And you can definitely hear the Latin percussion influence on Thank You, Lord.
Absolutely. That's definitely me showing honor and respect and the influence that the Escovedos had on me, for sure.
Uh-huh. So you started out as the drummer and the backing vocalist for the group. When was the decision made to bring you to the forefront as lead vocalist? Well,
I sang sort of like a bridge lead vocal on a song coming soon off the Concept album. They really dug what I did on that. And Slave was like this. It was like the Temptations in a way. You had people trading off on vocals. If you're listening to Slide, there's 3 or 4 different voices trading off in the song. And they did quite a few songs like that. So they asked me, could I sing? I'm like, yeah, I can do a little something. That being said, we fast forward to 79 to Just a Touch of Love. We had done the track, and we knew the track was killing. But the person that we figured that would lead it had left the studio and sort of disappeared for about 2 weeks, just kind of, I guess, went back to Dayton and just, was doing his thing. So, the rest of us were like, oh, okay, well, we got to figure out what we're going to do with this track. So we went around the mic, several people took a shot at the song and whatever. And then Jimmy Douglas, who was the producer and also the engineer for the sessions, he's like, Steve, you go out there and come up with something, see what you hear, man. And I'm like, dun, dun, dun. I don't have any words, right? And they're like, yo, man. And they're looking at each other like, what is that? They're like, no, we don't know, but it sounds interesting. Go to the hotel, come back tomorrow with some words. So I show up to the studio the next day with words, and make me shine. Anyway, they're like, yo, man, we don't know what it is, but we feeling it, bro. We feeling it. So I end up singing lead vocals on the song. When the old dude comes back, he's like, yo, man, I'm digging what you went and did, man. This is dope. And there was no animosity at all. It all worked well. And as time went on, dealing with Watching You after that and Snapshot, I became the the primary lead vocalists, they were still trading off, and others, Danny Webster and Floyd Miller and also Starlina and Kurt, they all sang songs as well. But it seemed like I had the singles after that, after the Just a Touch of Love.
Yeah. So it almost seems like you were reluctant to sing lead. Seemed like you was more content with, being the drummer.
Absolutely.
So just did you ever envision yourself as a lead vocalist?
No, because I never was that in Dayton. I didn't know how to be a front man. I didn't know how to read the crowd. I didn't know how to, bring in the crowd participation. All of that was just right there in the line of fire.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went out on tour after singing Just a Touch of Love, I started singing from the drums because I was comfortable from the drums.
Right.
And they're like, man, you got to go out front, dude. I'm like, man, okay, all right. So what I would do, I would watch all the shows on whoever we were on shows with, and we were on shows with the best. So there was Kool and the Gang, and there was the Gap Band, and there was Zap, and there was Barkays, and there was Rick James. And we were always on tour with these guys, Cameo. So what I would do, I would watch the lead singers and say, okay, they're going to the stage and doing this, or they going up front to the ladies. And so I mimicked those guys until I felt comfortable being, as a front man. And so I just did it right there in the line of fire. The guys supported me. And for the longest time, I saw myself as a drummer who sang. But then as time continued to go and keep going, I saw myself as a singer who also played drums. And that took a while because I'd spent all my life wanting to be a really good drummer.
Uh-huh.
And the next thing I know, I still played on the records,
right?
But people knew me more as a singer and then a drummer, and I hadn't been singing that long. So it was just kind of crazy. Sometimes you just never know. God's got things for you you just don't see coming, and I didn't see that coming.
Right. And it's kind of crazy because I was about to ask you if you patterned your vocals, your memorable tenor after anyone, but based on what you just said, I can definitely hear Larry Blackmon. I can hear Rick James. And then before the interview, I was like, I'm hearing Bootsy too. So am I right?
Well, I absorbed things, but more than anything, what I would do, I would like mimic solos like Hendrix, like for instance, I used to love to mimic his solo Machine Gun Live Band of Gypsies. Or I would mimic John Coltrane solos, try to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have a particular singer that I focused on, but I absorbed a lot of stuff. I absorbed Stevie Wonder, or I absorbed the lead vocalist for Yes, John Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Or then it was my love for Aretha and the shout she had in her voice.
Right.
And, the great Sugarfoot and the great, who else was I really into? Just absorbing at that point, not some from a singer point of view, but enjoying their voice. I can't think right now, but that's cool. What I did is I absorbed a lot of different styles of music, right? James Taylor, that's who I was thinking about. I really dug his, the sincerity in his voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I had no particular style or pattern that I went for in terms of my vocal style, because I was wide open, because I didn't sing vocals as a musician coming up locally. I was the drummer. Mm-hmm. So when people heard Just a Touch of Love and they say, man, who's that new dude singing with Slave? Who was that? Steve Arrington, like Steve Arrington, the drummer? Yeah, I didn't even know he sang. It's like, yeah, I didn't either, but that's who it is. Anyway, bottom line is I absorbed all these people, but I absorbed them for the love of the music, not as singers. So you might hear something come out of me that shows echoes of this one or that one within my own style that I had developed, which for me, I never thought twice about what I did was right or wrong, because I never said so-and-so wouldn't do it this way or so-and-so would do it that way. I never had that in me because I never was the guy expected to sing and rock the mic. So that was actually, it ended up being an advantage for me, although it was tough to get all that going because I was like, I was used to being in that background, right?
Right.
I wasn't used to being up front. I was cool driving the band, being funky. The other guys doing all the talking and I just sat back and was cool. And the next thing I know, I'm right in front going, okay, all right, I guess I can do this. Yeah.
The spotlight is on. So you led like memorable hits of Slaves, Just a Touch of Love, Watching You, Wait for Me, and Snapshot.
Mhm.
So come 1981, 82, is there a point when you realize that it's time to spread your wings and move on?
Well, the first thing that happened, if you notice after the first Slave album, right?
Right.
There was people coming and going. The lineup always changed. The cool thing about it for a while is the lineup changes, the group evolved and continued to get better.
Right.
But then at the same time, though, Stevie Washington, who was the leader of the group, Starlita Young, who also sang vocals on Just Freak and other joints, and Kurt Jones, they felt uncomfortable with how some things were going from the business point of view. They left the group right after the Stone Jam album. They didn't tour with us. And they started Aura, which Aura was first an offshoot of Slave when we were all together, their first album. But their second album, they had on their own as Aura group, not having nothing to do with Slave. That was the first chink in the armor, crack in the wall, if you will. Mm-hmm. That was a big deal because he was the leader of the group and the visionary. So the great Mark Adams, the bassist, became the leader of the group. And Stevie asked me, did I want to join with them? And I said, no, I'm going to stay with the brothers band from Dayton. So we went on to do the Showtime album. And we were very proud of that record. But a lot of the issues that was going on that Steve saw and was uncomfortable with, and it's been a part of Black entertainment since the beginning, where there was just business issues. That being said, I decided to go ahead and leave after the Showtime album to do Steve Arrington's Hall of Fame. And we remained friends throughout all of that. And there was never really some bitter breakup. It's just we all knew, and they had issues as well with what was going on. But see, I was never actually signed to the group. So I was singing lead vocalist a lot of the times, and also, one of the primary writers, but I never was signed to the group. So I was always a sideman. That being said, I just said, well, okay, things are going a certain way. I'll just go ahead and start my own unit. And that was Steve Arrington's Hall of Fame, with the first single being Way Out.
So in hindsight, do you think that that was a blessing in disguise that you wasn't signed to the group?
In a way, yes, but I loved being in Slave. See, people think, well, okay, he did the lead singer thing. He wanted to go out on solo and do his thing, blah, blah, blah. That wasn't the case. I really dug being a part of Slave, and I dug being a part of that unit. But like I said, there were people coming and going after the first album, and that just continued and continued to happen. Unfortunately, the group had signed, they were 16 years old when Slide came out. They had signed when they were 15 years old. So there was things there that, I was privy to and understanding on how things were working from the business and finance point of view. So I thought, okay, it's best for me to form my own band. Stevie Washington and those guys had left. So yeah, in a way, since I hadn't signed, I wasn't like tied to what was going on that they were uncomfortable with business-wise themselves, but they were tied to it because they were signed.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, but there was that I was disappointed because I loved being enslaved.
Just speak on the adjustments you had to make from being part of a band to fronting one, or having your own band.
Well, some of the musicians that were also unsigned with Slave came with me, the Carter brothers, Roger Parker, who also had played drums with Fazo doing the song Riding High.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, there was some camaraderie that was there. Musicians I knew, and then I brought in new musicians one from Berkeley, Victor Gotzi, and brought in a guitarist out of New York as well, Arthur Rames. And, we did our thing, and I was able to open up the palette, if you will, like a song like Betty Bye. That would never be on a Slave record. It has a very angular melody to it, jazzy, but jazzy in a more angular way, not just cool jazz chords, but the melody, do do dee do da da do dee, that kind of stuff we wouldn't do in Slave, right? That being said, though, so I got excited about having more power for my direction, where I wanted to go. So I went Weak in the Knees, that dirty, grimy funk that with a lot of the vocals that. A lot of words in Weak in the Knees, whereas some of the things I did with Slave were more melodic and sort of floated at the top. Weak in the Knees was just jam was more bluesy, right? So I was able to exercise different influences that was on me as an artist. I could do that in the Hall of Fame unit. So yeah, after getting over, okay, that didn't really work like I wanted it to. I enjoyed doing Steve Arrington's Hall of Fame and how I had the creative power to take it any kind of direction I wanted to.
Okay. And obviously with the Hall of Fame, you had hits such as Weak at the Knees, Nobody Can Be You But You, mm-hmm. Dancing in the Key of Life, and then a personal favorite of mine, She Doesn't Know.
Now see, Dancing in the Key of Life and She Doesn't Know was after. That was after Steve Arrington's Hall of Fame. That was just that Steve Arrington, those two tracks. Right. But you said, Way Out, and also Nobody Can Be You, and Weak in the Knees. All of those joints were definitely Hall of Fame, Steve Arrington's Hall of Fame.
Okay. So why did you decide to go the solo route? Was it more of a label decision or yours?
Well, it was interesting because I continued to evolve as an artist. I wanted to do dance music. Mm-hmm. Dancing in the Key of Life, Feels So Real. She Just Doesn't Know, things like that. I wanted to change up again because remember, as I said, when I was a little kid, I listened to so much music in my house, right? And here's what be my concert experiences. One week I'd go see Curtis Mayfield. The next week it's Frank Zappa. Mm-hmm. Then the next week it's Deep Purple. And then the next week it was Sly and the Family Stone. And so I listened to all this music. I went to concerts constantly when I was 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, right? That being said, I wanted to continue to explore. We were going through some issues. Also, my spirituality was getting more and more and more in the forefront of what I was wanting to do. And that became a place of, conflict with the label and people like that who were like, man, well, you getting busy doing this other stuff, man. I mean, why switch things up? And I'm like, because I think now I think more like a jazz musician. Then I just said, I just feel I got to go with my heart, man. I want to do this other thing over here. I want to continue to challenge myself and grow. And so that was the genesis of why I just went into Steve Arrington solo.
Okay. So you just touched on when you started to get that call to minister. Did you answer that call instantly, or did it sort of weigh on you for a while, and then you finally decided to pursue that passion as well, or that calling?
Well, I started to feel it sort of coming on, because again, I grew up in church, and I have great uncles and even cousins now who are preachers. So preachers were in my family.
Right.
And as time went on and I was pursuing my love for music, I also have a deep passion for God and connecting with God and wanting to have that relationship. And as time went on in my music career, my relationship and my deeper need to get closer with God came more and more to the forefront. And instead of fighting that or saying like, I can't do that because that'll hurt my career, I didn't do any of that. I just said, hey man, I'm going to follow my heart.
Right.
It started with songs like Dancing in the Key of Life. Now it had always been there, but it became more and more of the driving force of my life. And I didn't allow the fact that I had hit records or, was considered an R&B guy, had did some classic hits and, part of some great bands. I didn't let that stop me, because it was the fact that I was willing to do things different, which was why I was able to do the things I had already been doing, because I wasn't afraid to be different. I wasn't afraid to follow my heart. Okay. And I just continued that pattern, and that led me into the ministry.
Okay. So did you sort of run into the same, I'll say, dilemma as Reverend Al Green when you decided to become a pastor, but then you had, music from your past that people would deem secular? So like with him, he stopped performing those songs, but then eventually came back to it. Like, did you sort of have that same issue as well?
Well, it was interesting for me when I pulled away from it. I didn't miss the secular world. I didn't miss the music or any of that. I was totally immersed in church and church music and that whole thing. I was leading praise and worship, and for 25 years, I felt absolutely no inkling or pull from what I had done before. Mm-hmm. But after 25 years, and I was like, yo, man, I'm feeling like I'm supposed to go back and go where I came from and just let my light shine, just show love.
Right.
That being said, people's like, 25 years, bro, you crazy, man. That's too long. You can't go back. It's too long. I'm like, yeah, people may have forgotten me, may not dig where I'm at. That's cool. But I believe I've got to do this. Mm-hmm. So just like I left, I came back to it. And I realized within that, you had been doing music that was uplifting all along. Right. But that really wasn't the point for me. The point for me is not being afraid to do the journey that I felt was necessary for me versus letting my career or people or, you're going to lose your place in the game. All the things that they say happen when you decide to go a different way. Like they said, man, what's with this way out thing? You're doing the slave. What's this? Don't, what is that, bro? And I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I'm feeling it. You know what I'm saying? So I just always followed my heart. Now, great musicians that I love, vary from different styles and genres. But jazz musicians always did things and worked with other people. Like John Coltrane, he was with Miles, he was with Monk, he did his own bands, and then he said he's going to change the great band he had with Elvin Jones and McCoy Tyner and Jimmy Garrison. He did a thing completely different when he started getting into more free jazz, right? Mm-hmm. So he worked with different people. He worked with Alice Coltrane, his wife, Rashid Ali, and he did a totally different style of music than the Coltrane that, say, did Giant Steps and My Favorite Things and that sort of style. I'm more of that kind of musician. I think what I loved about Prince so much, rest in peace, is that Prince was not afraid to do what he wanted to do. He didn't make it like he's the funk guy, or he's the like sort of we will say he had the style where he could do just straight pop music, just straight ahead pop music. Well, some people like the funk side of Prince. Prince was like, well, get that side too, but I'm doing this pop thing. And then he would do this thing where it would be like this experimental style music, very experimental style. And I dug all of it because I dug the fact that he wasn't allowing hit records to stop his artistry. And see, right. That's where I'm coming from. I'm an artist. And so if you say, well, you just got to keep doing this for the rest of your life, I'm going to go, no, I'm not doing that. I'm kin to Miles. I think more like Miles. I think more like Prince. I can do that until I feel I want to do something different. Well, your sales are going to change or whatever. It's like, well, but you may lose fans, but you may gain more. And then people may look and say, well, wait a minute. Now we have to look at Steve different. This dude is an artist. And we're into his art, the journey of Steve Arrington's art versus, okay, well, if you're not doing this particular thing, we ain't rocking with you. Right. So, I've moved in that place through the years because of not staying in one place where people dig me for my art, as I dig people like Prince, because I dug him as an artist.
Which, I mean, I think that ties into the fact that you've had a decade-long relationship with Stones Throw Records, which is known for Jay Dilla, Madlib, MF Doom, rest in peace, Aloe Black. Like, I feel like Stones Throw is basically a house full of eclectic musicians without any borders. Like Peanut Butter Wolf gives his artists leeway to create without boundaries. Is that pretty much what you saw with Stones Throw?
Absolutely. And I think it's exciting. I really dig Stones Throw for that. And of course, because of it, they've put out some earth-shaking music that's helped shape, the trajectory of music. I mean, you mentioned Jay Dilla and Madlib and Doom. Cats like that, Aloe Black. These cats have really pushed music forward. They've made great statements. So I felt very much at home in that environment. And I've continued to be able to move forward and continue my journey as an artist and to continue to be excited about being an artist and my music. And I'm just as excited about it today as I was when I first joined Slave, or when I first started working with the Escovillos. I'm still that excited. I still get when I'm about to hit the mic or when we get doing shows, I still get all of that. And Stones Throw has been a place that I could be where that kind of energy they want to cultivate and keep it going, and I just turned 65, right? And they're like, yo, man, let's keep it popping. Let's keep dropping these joints. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I'm doing all these collabs with different younger producers coming up, you know what I'm saying? And that's been a lot of fun as well.
Like who?
Well, for instance, Mind Design, and Devin Morrison. Mm-hmm. And let's say DJ Harrison, Shebo, J Rock, the mighty J Rock.
Okay.
And you want me to keep going?
All right, as long as you want to go. But
Yeah, I'm just
yeah.
saying, a lot of cats, man.
Okay, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you released a new album late last year, Down to the Lowest Terms, the
Yes.
Soul Sessions.
Mm-hmm.
A few of the songs that stood out for me was The Joys of Love, Keep Dreaming, Love Is Gone, and Make You Say Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Knowledge, that joint I did with Knowledge. Shout out to the mighty Knowledge, man, no doubt. Yeah, that record, what's so interesting about it, years ago, I really enjoyed the term Down to the Lowest Terms. It's a mathematical term, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's algebra. Anyway, it stuck with me because I thought about it this way. People say, bottom line, so-and-so, this, that, and the other. When it's all said and done, this, that, and the other. So I put Down to the Lowest Terms in that sort of thought process. Down to the lowest terms for me, when you break it all down, it's the blues, right?
Right.
So I remember thinking as a young man before I, making records or anything, I thought, man, one day I'm gonna make a record called Down to the Lowest Terms. Okay, so I'm making these wonderful records with Slave and Hall of Fame and Steve Arrington, and I'm making these groundbreaking records, and I'm thinking, man, I've been so lucky to be a part of some important music in my career, but none of it sounded like Down to the Lowest Terms. Mm-hmm. So I never just stuck a title just because I thought it sounded slick or that I thought it sounded important, so I wouldn't do it just as for the sound hit. Oh, he got a new album called Down to the Lowest Terms. So I never did call any record that. But I started going to Chicago because I wanted to study Chicago blues. I really dug Hound Dog Taylor, Muddy Waters, and Coco Taylor, and Hound Dog, like I said, and Howlin' Wolf, and Buddy Guy. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, yo, man, a lot of people go up to Chicago, maybe the city and that Buddy Guy's blues bar and see if they can hang or whatever. I'm like, yo, I'm going to go to Chicago and I'm going to get my band from Chicago and I'm going to be around that energy. And so I did that for 9 years. I drove back and forth from Dayton to Chicago when I wasn't on the road to rehearse, right? Mm-hmm. And I absorbed that Chicago blues that they call it Mississippi North. And I love that down home blues. I mean, as dirty and grimy as you can get it. I'm with it, right? Uh-huh. So that being said, I did that for 9 years and I'm working on new material with Stone's Throw. And all of a sudden, that sort of grimy, sort of more soulful, bluesy side started to come out in the tunes, right? And I'm like, mm-hmm. You know what? This sounds like Down to the Lowest Terms. And I told Peanut Butter Wolf, I said, yo, and I told him the story. He said, oh, dude, that's crazy. I'm like, yeah, man, I've been holding on to this title for years since I was a young head, bro. And then I said, I'm going to call it Down to the Lowest Terms / the Soul Sessions. Well, why the Soul Sessions? Because this is an eclectic style of music, but I'm giving it my all on all of it. I'm completely giving it up on all the different styles. And I'm working with all these different producers. Brian Ellis is another one. And Jerry Paper's another. So all these different producers, but there's a gelling of coming together, a cohesiveness because of my vocal style and the fact that I got this fresh vibe of this going on, right? Uh-huh. And it sounded like Down to the Lowest Terms. And in the Soul Sessions, like I said, is because I gave my all on every track. gifted and blessed with doing like a house joint. But he's got this whole mechanical thing going in the middle of it that sounds so cool. And I love the fact that I never made this album or a album that did not fit this title. Right. This one does. And I waited until I got to that place where my artistry caught up with the title that I loved so much. I'm talking about from the 8th grade on.
Wow. I think it's a beautiful thing that you're still a student of the craft. And maybe that's probably why you still have this zest for musicianship, I think.
Hey man, I do. I am a student, and I say that with the most humble of perspective that I can, because I was just listening today. Let me go back. Now, I tell you what, before I say that, I'll say this. I've been vibing on the group Blackpink from this whole Korean movement, right? Mm-hmm. It's K-pop movement. And then there's this group Blackpink, these girls, I really dig what they're doing. I like their producer, Teddy Parks. And so, you know, it might be that blues thing I'm into, like, I mean, it's just, man. And then all of a sudden I'm like, yo, man, I'm into all things Thelonious Monk. Uh-huh. You know, and I'm vibing on Thelonious, you know, or then it's like, yo, man, I'm on like Mad Lib, you know what I'm saying? For me, the beauty of music and the enjoyment is still like it was when I was a kid, when my mother made us get up on a Saturday morning and clean the house, wash boards, windows, and all of that. And we had a Cuba Telefunken record player, one of those console joints. And we would listen to Aretha, and we would listen to Walk on the Wild Side and Chili Con Carne, Kenny Burrell, and then listen to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and then listen to People Are Strange, The Doors, and then listen to the Meters, all in the same day as we're cleaning up the house. That's never left for me. Mm-hmm. So then I remember my brother brought home Aaron Copland album. What was the name of that joint? Appalachian Spring. Okay, Rodeo. Fanfare for the Common Man. And I'm listening. I'm like, yeah. He's like, check this out. I'm like, yeah. So later on, I come and turn him on to Stravinsky, Rite of Spring. You know what I'm saying? Classical joint. So all of that is part of my DNA as a human loving music. And that's never going to go away. And so that search and that quest for me going further and deeper, if it meant me going to Chicago for 9 years and to just absorb that, that's what I'm going to do. I went out to California when I was a young head. When I first got out of high school, I wanted to absorb what was going on in the Bay Area. I did that. And so, you know, for me, when I'm challenging myself and I'm pushing the envelope for me, may not be pushing any envelope for someone looking at me, but right. For when I feel like I'm doing my thing and I'm going forward and pushing, that's when I'm in my element. And that may not work for everybody. I'm not saying one size fits all or anything. There's no good or bad either way anyone sees it. Everyone has to do what makes them feel good and puts them in the best position to do their best art. For me, constant in search of the next thing is when I'm on my game.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you have talked extensively about who has influenced you, but let's get into who you've influenced. So we have like Keith Sweat remaking Just a Touch of Love. We have Snoop Dogg sampling you with Jenny Juice and Lay Low and Let's Get Blown. Criss Cross with All Right, NWA with Gangsta Gangsta. most famously Jermaine Dupri and Jay-Z, Money Ain't a Thing, A Tribe Called Quest, The Chase Part 2, and Odyssey, Inside Out. So how does that make you feel as a musician to know that your creations, have spawned such greatness elsewhere?
It's exciting for me. I enjoy it. I've talked to a lot of these people that you mentioned, and they let me know what they felt my music has done for them, and the love and the respect they've given me. It's a blessing. I love all the sides of music. It's tough too, because it can be, your career can be up and down. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? But there's those who like, hey man, this is what I'm here to do. So to have some people coming behind me who appreciate what I've done and saying, hey man, you've encouraged and you've given me many a day of having a good time, smiling. And there's been many times that I may have been into a funk and I listened to your music and it pulled me out. Um, and of course, and then it's just that, people absorb what you do, like I've absorbed so many that have come before me, and absorb those who are contemporaries, like right now.
Mhm.
So to be a part of the excitement of the absorption of generations, for me to have my place in that as well, it gets no better than that for me, because I'm amongst those who, hey man, look at me the way I've looked at many who have come before me. And that's important because, I'm in this thing for real. I love this. And for a younger artist to feel that for however big or small influence or whatever, it doesn't matter. The fact that what I've done has touched them, that's good enough for me.
Beautiful. So before I let you go, Steve, feel free to plug any upcoming projects, your social media handles, and then leave us with some words of encouragement.
Well, you can reach me, of course, at Instagram, Steve underscore Arrington. Twitter, the same, Steve underscore Arrington. Facebook, Steve Arrington Music. I've just been talking to some guys recently. I'll be doing some fresh collabs coming up. Doing some more. Just talked to Peanut Butter Wolf just recently. We're looking at putting out some new music on me as well soon. I'm excited about. I really enjoy the collabs. It's a lot of fun for me. Different styles, different energy, pulling something different out in me. Um, but what I'd like to say in terms of parting words is just to say, you know what? Don't be afraid to be yourself, because that's what people want to hear. People want to hear you. Um, you know, uh, don't be afraid to be different. Um, and hey, man, be decent folk out here, because a career is up and down. And if you're a person that has a good reputation of being solid people, you don't have a bunch of people turning on you when your career is not at a zenith, because a career, to sustain a career over many years, it's an up and down affair. You want to be decent folk, because you want to be decent people, because when those times when it's not as big as another time, you have people like say, yo man, let's do this, let's do that. They want to help you as you want to help others, you know what I'm saying, when they're going through it. So that's very important. Keep your business together. It is the music business. Get good lawyers, people you can trust around you, so people aren't stealing your money. And love God, man.
Hmm. Wise words from the legendary Steve Arrington. Thank you, sir.
Man,
Thank you for your time today. Thank you for this music musical journey that you have taken us on for over 40 years
thank
in various genres. I, as a kid, I know your story when you first discovered music. I'm somewhat similar. I was at my grandfather's house and I would be playing with his 45s and rolling them across the carpet in his den. And that's how I first kind of fell in love with music. So we sort of have that in common. But just growing up, I listened to your music as a kid. So just to have this opportunity with you is definitely something that I hold near and dear. So continued blessings, good health to you and your loved ones. And for Stop, Look, and Listen, I'm your host, LaTroy Gardner. See you next week. Peace and blessings.
Thank you for checking us out on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe for more great content. And don't forget to check us out on social media at GOB Radio Network.